Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. This is a video to a viewer request that asked me to do a video on how to get started working with Zostack and what are some potential resources. And I'm actually going to go a little bit further and combine this video to make it not only for beginners, but to make it also for people who already work in Zos and offer my favorite books. And trust me, I have gone through a lot of books, so I'm going to share some of my favorites and give you an understanding of why they're favorite, as well as some of the online resources for further deepening your studies of working with the Zostack. I thought this was such a great video request because if you have been following me for years, you know that this is my it deck. If I can only work with one deck for the rest of my life, I'd be very thrilled to work only with this deck. I've been working with this deck for 20 years. My first deck, Introduction to Tarot, as many of you probably had the same introduction, has been this. And then I had somebody gifting me this deck, and then I have never looked back. So I'd be very happy to share with you my thoughts, my impressions, and how to get started. I trim my copy because I feel like it's so much better when it looks like individual paintings. This deck, when I hold this deck in my hands, makes me smile. It just makes me absolutely happy. It feels like I'm coming home. Perhaps this is how one figures out whether a deck is their primary deck, when it feels like you coming back home to something. So let's start off by talking about the very, very basics, because I feel that essentially in the beginning, there is a lot of, there's potential misinformation about Aleister Crowley's and Lady Freda Harris's Zostack. And one part of misinformation is that this deck is its own system and that it is so different and so divorced from Rider-Waite-Smith's deck. And that is absolutely not true. Remember, both Aleister Crowley and Arthur Waite come from the same Golden Nun tradition. As a result, both decks carry the same associations, they carry a lot of the same planetary assignments, and so on and so forth. The main difference is some of the arrangement of the cards between Adjustment, which Crowley renamed from Justice to Adjustment, and renaming last after Strengths and changing their positioning, and as well renaming Judgment to Ion. Apart from that, really, it is essentially the same system. My understanding is that Waite wanted to conceal the esoteric and exoteric knowledge and not to be so clearly displayed in the cards, versus Crowley actually wanted all of that exoteric and esoteric knowledge to ooze out of the cards because he felt like a public needed to have access to it. On top of that, this deck, especially for people who are interested in ceremonial magic, is a wonderful, wonderful tool for learning that. The things that are embedded in this deck are off the charts. And for that reason, because it has so much in it already from the get-go on the images of the cards, in my opinion, it makes it actually way much easier to learn versus this. Now, I feel that a lot of times people feel, let me find a similar card. I feel that sometimes people have a feeling that this deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, is easier to learn because all the minors are illustrated. It looks like almost like images from a storybook. You can easily pick this deck up and you can easily read it just looking at the images. And people feel that the Thoth deck is much more peep illustrated. One can argue peeps are illustrated too, but a little bit more Marseille-esque like. And for that reason, I think people find it that, oh, I have to understand all of the things embedded in a deck to be able to even read Visit to begin with, which I think is really, really not true. I think that all of the understanding and meanings you have right there smack on top of the deck, you just have to train your mind and learn to look at it differently than you would look for in this deck. I'm looking for this card. This is the card my card for today. So let me show you a contrast. So this is my card for today, 4 of Cups. And here's the 4 cups in Rider-Waite-Smith deck. People often feel that this is easier to read because there's a storyline. There's the guy sitting underneath the tree. He has 3 cups. There's the hand coming out of the sky, offering him another cup. And he doesn't even want it. He has so much going on in terms of water being available in a cup that he's almost feeling apathetic, right? So it's an easier story to read. For this reason, people think this is an easier deck to read with. This deck, in my opinion, offers so much more. At first glance, you may feel like this is very challenging because you don't know what's going on other than 4 cups overflowing with the water. But if you look closer and if you start paying attention, first pay attention to the colors, because Lady Frida Hayers used the Golden Dawn attribution of color scales. So the color, first and foremost, will tell you a lot. And Lon Milo DuQuette, and I'll link his class below, and I'll talk more about his class in the class, talks about the color scales being so significant that even if you know absolutely nothing about the deck, and you looked at this card, and you look at the Crowley deck, and you just look and pick up the feelings that derive from looking at the color combination, through just reading through your eyes, you're going to pick up, whether you wear it or not, some element of card attributes. And he is absolutely right. Look at this, the cards are flowing, but yet we see these darker skies in the background that are coming to the forefront. So we know that the luxury displayed here is short-lived. Then look how clearly we have the astrological attribution on the card. We have moon, and then on the bottom you have moon in Cancer. So this immediately tells us a lot. What happens when moon enters Cancer? What do we know about the moon? What do we know about the tides and waves and fluctuations of the moon? What do we know about Cancer? Cancer being a very internal, very watery sign, tends to like to hold on to its feeling and be very feeling oriented. So once you start really looking at all of the things that the cards have to offer, and then combine that with, for example, number 4, what do you know of the number 4? What other cards, right? If you were to look at the trumps associated with this card, and for this, I should have grabbed Susan Chang's, is it 36? I think it's 36. What is the title of her book? Amazing book on deacons. It will give you even more information. The moon card, right? And Cancer. So here we have Priestess lined up next to the 4 of Cups associated with Chariot, because Chariot is a Cancer trump in the majors. So what happens when the active internal intuition of the Priestess gets combined with the very active energy of Chariot? We immediately know that these energies, when they're combined, are most likely not going to be long-lived, because High Priestess energies are more, even though they're active, so it's an active intuition we speak of, whereas Chariot is a very active, very will-driven card. So we already know that this luxury is short-lived. Something is happening now, but it's already passing. It's already coming through. So you get so much from this card than what you would get from this card. And I have just started, and I haven't even touched on the Kabbalistic meanings of the card. So as you can see from the get-go, we just get so much initially from the beginning. And this is the wonderful and the powerful thing of this, because this is a really magical machine. This is, for those of us who love to study and look at the correspondences, this is a masterpiece for that, because so much of it is already on the cards, where this is, picture interpretations. It feels to me as if somebody has done picture interpretations, and the problem that I had with this deck is when I worked with it, this is the images that get stuck with my headspace. And I know for a lot of people, it's the same thing, where all they're thinking about is, this is the 4 of Cups. The minute they see 4 of Cups, either in Sauce or in Marseille, they go to this, they go to this, they go to this, because that's what gets stuck in our heads. We create memory bridges between images and their meaning, and then it becomes very, very difficult. A lot of people advise when you start learning tarot to start with Marseille. Why? Because it's pips. You're learning about numbers and you're learning about the elements. 4 What is number 4? Well, we know 4 is a very stable number, but it's not so stable, right? Because what comes after 4, there's 5. 5s are very unstable. Also element of water. Water doesn't tend to be very stable either. So it's very interesting when you look at it that way. For that reason, I think this is a very actually easy deck to read with. I think what happens, and I wonder if this is what happened to a lot of people watching this who may have struggled studying this deck, is that because so much symbolism is in the card, and we also know that there's a lot of Kabbalistic associations to this deck, as is to, by the way, to this one. Let's not fool ourselves, the same thing here, just here is made explicitly more clear. People get a little overwhelmed. When they're starting out with this deck, they get several books. They get a book on astrology, a book on Kabbalah, they get a book on the elements, they get book for each almost aspect of the deck. And so when you're sitting down and you're doing a daily draw and you get 4 of Cups and you have 4 or 5 reference books, and you have to go through each book to reference to get the understanding, to learn about the card, it can be really overwhelming. You're getting information overload. And before you know it, you're no longer enjoying it. Now it becomes almost a learning chore. And part of the tarot, even though learning is a part of it, the biggest part of tarot is to be able to enjoy it, is to be able to have a relationship with it. So if you're watching this and you're just starting out with those, first and foremost, I will have 2 books here, well, one really good book that has pretty much all of those basics in it, and it can be your only reference guide, and you don't need to have all of the books. You also don't have to go to the deep end and study everything. I have been working with this for a long time, and I barely scratch the surface of Kabbalah. So don't overwhelm yourself. You can only just work with astrological attributes. You can only work with elemental and numerological attributes of each of the cards, and you already will be very far ahead in understanding this deck. Again, this is the same system as this one. There are changes, minor changes in the cards, and that's pretty much it. So I really want to encourage all of you to take a look at this, because this, in my opinion, is an amazing, amazing deck. When you're starting out with this deck, before I get to the books, one of the ways that I found worked best for me to learn this deck is, one, not to overwhelm myself in terms of how many books I had. And for me, being very heady and very analytical, that was really challenging to do. It's still challenging to do. I still pull toward a lot of books. Another thing is, I feel that if you are going to use a lot of educational material to learn cards, such as reference guides, instead of doing a card a day, I would suggest keep using your more familiar deck for the card a day, but use this deck as a card, one card for a whole week, or one card for the whole month. So then you have those 7 days, or you have 30 days in a month to sit with that card more. You have, and I'll give you resources, both resources that are auditory as well as resources that you can read in order to learn more about this deck. That's what I recommend. It will help you to pace yourself and even learn about the cards in much more depthful way without feeling overwhelmed. Now let's move to the books. Before I want to move to the books, yes, let's actually start with the books. A lot of you have this book. I have this book. I started with this book until I learned things about this book. Angela Arian, the writer of this book, she strays really far off from symbolism and the meanings that Crowley originally wanted and originally intended for each one of the cards. And it's not a bad thing when there's writers that strays far from the purity of the symbolism of the deck. And I'm going to link below Mary Greer's great blog post about this. And I'll let you, after reading the blog post, decide whether you, if you have this book, if you want to get this book, whether you want to start this way. In my opinion, if you're just starting out with those, you have to decide whether you want to be first pure to what Crowley intended before you can stray away. Almost in a way of having those foundational seeds. It's just like cooking, right? If I wanted to learn how to make, I don't know, the most classic basic dish, I'll go buy the most classic basic recipe, and only then, once I understand what makes it the classic, what are the basics, I can stray away and improvise. The same applies here. I'm going to leave that article below. It's a really good one, and let you decide, and it's a brief one, what to make of it instead of giving you my opinion. For me, I no longer use this book because my also meanings and understanding have evolved, and I just no longer see cards in that way. But I know that a lot of people have this book, and I don't think that a lot of people know this about that book. There is, my understanding is that there is quite a bit of dispute among those communities, if you will, about a lot of books on those tarot on the market, and about the fact that a lot of them do stray very far away from the symbolism that Crowley actually initially intended. And as a result, they really tend to dilute or take those in a different direction than Crowley intended. And I'm going to also link below an article, blog post by Marcus Katz, who has written his opinion on the books he thinks are good for starting with those. He gives a little bit wonky kind of scale system, but he does discuss some of the classics out there. So I would encourage, if you're starting out, or if you just want to see if the books you have on your shelf are solid and good, they look at that. Having said that about Angela Arias' book, anybody who has those, without a doubt, will always recommend for you to have this. In fact, my understanding is that Crowley intended for this to be sold together, which sadly it is not. Crowley throws everything into this book along with the kitchen sink. People say that this is complicated read. I don't find it complicated. I find this book a life living spirit, because every time I read it, I not only discover something else, but I learn something completely different. And it feels like the book morphs and changes as I morph and change in my relationship to souls. So it's really encouraged for you to get it and to start off with this book, or at least when you draw a card for your week or your month or your day, to look at this book. I think anybody would encourage you. You have to start with the creator and what creator has intended. Having said that, as I mentioned, a lot of people find this book challenging to read. If you find this book challenging to read, the next best thing that takes what's in here and distills it in a very understandable plain terms will be Lon Milo DuQuette book. I'm going to link below. Lon Milo DuQuette has a $30 for class workshop that has been already pre-recorded, where he talks about the magic embedded in those deck. Alongside, he has his own ceremonial magic deck based on this, because this deck, like I said, is excellent for studying ceremonial magic. But that class for $30 is fantastic. Will it teach you how to read those? No. Will it give you symbolism of each card? No. But it's going to give you a lot of really great insights. It's going to give you insights in the color scales. It's going to give you insights in how astrologically all of the cards and court cards organized. It's going to give you insights why all of the court cards live inside of an ace. It's going to give you insight on some of the amazing symbolism on some of the cards, insights on why Crowley renamed and changed the order of adjustment, which used to be or is still in Rider-Waite-Smith's justice with strength, and change strength to lust and change judgment to iron. Is going to give you a lot of nice nuggets you never think about, including, and this is a lot of people don't realize, when a lot of people say that without really knowing more about history and knowing more about golden dawn history, a lot of people say, oops, this deck with the chariot wanting to run away from it, this deck is evil, it's bad, because Crowley was evil, was bad, it's demonic. Well, the truth is, this deck and this deck, each card has not only an angelic being assigned to it, but also one of the demons from Goetia assigned to it as well. So whether you realize it or not, you actually indirectly, every time you use a rendition of any one of the stack on the market, any one of the stack, you indirectly actually engaging with angels and demons. You may not actually directly summon them or give them a task to accomplish for you, but they're here in a deck. So it's really fascinating class. It's $30. You can't go wrong with Lon Milo DuQuette because he's such a fantastic teacher. I will link it below. And if you're interested in Goetia, his class on Goetia, which I think is $25 or $20, is also fantastic. What I don't personally like about this book, even though this is such a classic, while I love that Lon breaks down each one of the cards into the kind of more digestible language taken from this, sometimes I feel like, well, give me a little bit more meaning. What is more meaning here? What am I looking at here? And I feel like this book is lacking in that. So if you're with me and you have this book and you're like, yeah, I love this book, but I want something more, I have something more for you. Then comes 3 volumes by Marcus Katz. Una, dos. This is going to be a splurge. I really wish it was published as one big volume, just for easier accessibility, one big fat book versus 3 books. But you know, it looks like they were self-published, and when we're self-published, sometimes book gets published at a different timeline. So who knows, maybe Marcus published volume number 1 and then like a year or 2 later published volume 2. Volume 1 covers magical arts weavers, Thelema, Ions, and major arcana. Volume 2 covers bricks of living temple as a minor arcana, geomancy, and I Ching. And volume 3 covers the sanctuary of transcendental art, court cards, reading methods for the soul. I love this. I stopped referencing this when I got this. I'll tell you why. Marcus also does an amazing job of taking and oftentimes directly quoting Crowley from the Book of Thoth. So he stays, both him and Lon Milo DuQuette stay very, very, very close to illuminate what Crowley wanted us to understand with the Thoth text. They don't stray far and wide. They're being very pure and honest to it. What I like about Marcus's books, even though to me, Marcus as a writer is a little bit, has an interesting way of writing. To me, it doesn't feel like always very slam clear as Lon Milo DuQuette is. What I like about Marcus is that he, a lot of times, especially majors I found, will break down symbolisms that I haven't seen broken down anywhere else. For example, I remember reading a temperance card, which Crowley renamed Art, and talk about the sex magic in that card, which was so fascinating to me. So I love that about Marcus, is that he throws these things in here, this little magical insights of the cards. Also, I love it in the end of, after he talks about the card, in the end of the page's description, he will put down in a reading, and he will give you how does this card manifest in a reading. Pricey, because you're going to end up paying for each one of the books, and I think it's around $20 or $20-something. In my opinion, worth it. See if you can check out some sample pages on Amazon before jumping on it. In my opinion, at this point in my life, Lon, I love you so much. This is phenomenal. I just migrated to this. So these are fantastic books. Now, I know that some of you, as I just mentioned earlier, it can be overwhelming when you're studying Thoth and when you have so many resources, right? If you're just starting out and you don't want to get this, which, by the way, will not have sometimes some of the things you're looking for. You don't want to get this. You're thinking, okay, can I get started with something that just gives me, still stays very close to Crowley, and something that somewhere in the book will give me numerological basic essential meanings from 1 to 10. Also will give me basic knowledge of each one of the Sephiros of Tree of Life. Also will give me a basic knowledge of astrology. Where do I go for that? If you're looking for something like that, I would recommend this. This is a book by Scott Mueller. A lot of people are not very familiar with this book. I have not seen anybody talk about this book, even though it was published in 2017. I really like this. First of all, the descriptions and the meaning of the cards you will get are going to stay true to Crowley. It's going to be similar to what you can get in Marcus Katz and Lon Milo DuQuette. But what you will get in addition to that, if you're starting out and you just want one book, you're like, give me one good reference guide that has it all, this will have it all. So it will give you, in the first chapter, it'll give you good understandings, some good basics to even consider, which will make it fun. For example, cards, first category of the cards from 1 to 7, from Magician to Chariot, deal with finding personal identity. These are for trumps. From Adjustment, which is card 8, to the Devil, card 15, has to do with withdrawing into ourselves and connecting deeply with our inner world. From the Tower through the universe, relate to the reintegration of our spiritual essence and collective unity with all that exists. If you are somebody who have been studying tarot for a few years, you know that there has been people who've been breaking down majors into these 3 categories of self-development in relationship to the self and in relationship to the cosmos. You will also get elementals. What does the Wands, Cup, Swords, and Disc stand for? So it's kind of in the beginning great reference. You will get the numerical. What does numbers 0 to 10 stand for? You will also get astrology and tarot basics. You will get all of the planetary as well as zodiacal signs attributes, and you will get this fantastic on the bottom reminders that positive, outgoing, strong, and active signs are going to be Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius, and receptive, internalized, nurturing, tenacious cards are going to be Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. And you're also going to get which cards are cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And if you are new to astrology and that's overwhelms you, just those basics are going to help you a lot. On the 4 of Cups that we got, and this is Cancer, and Cancer is cardinal. Cardinals are starters. They're initiations. They start something. It's a start of idea. It doesn't last long, right? Whereas fixed signs are signs that get the work done. They're stable. They tend to bring things to completion. Mutable signs tend to be a little bit more anxious because they're on the way out. So just knowing that will give you so much to think about. And then you get your Kabbalah Tree of Life, according to tarot, and you get, look at that, a brief description of each one of the Sephiros, which will help you tremendously. So, oh, and if that wasn't enough, there is a brief chapter that tells you predominance of suits. So if you get a lot of Wands or Cups or Swords of Disc, what does it mean in a reading? Predominance of numbers. Again, what does that mean if you get a predominance of one or another? Predominance of astrological symbolism and predominance of elements. Highly, highly recommend if you want one book that has in just great descriptions that are very similar to Lon Milo DuQuette and Marcus Katz, and in the beginning has what you would call cliff notes that you can quickly reference and go back and forth. I would recommend this one, Zoster. You can get it on Amazon. Fantastic. Another one that I would recommend that also is fantastic is Meleen. It comes with her Tabula Mundi deck. I don't have Tabula Mundi deck because the art was not fully my cup of tea. But the book is great. And here's the thing, on the Full Stock app, the app for the tarot deck that is like, I think $2 or $3, you can get full access to the book for that price. This is also another great resource. So without overwhelming you, this is what I would say on specifically books for the tarot. If you want one that kind of has it, cliff notes, and but also stays to true meaning, this. If you want something that will quote directly from the Book of Thoth and stay even closer to the essence of Thoth, as well as give you some of the secret symbolisms in it in a little bit more detail. Marcus Katz is good. Lon Milo DuQuette, you already know you can't go wrong with Lon Milo DuQuette. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced student and you are dorking out with Thoth, like many of us do, and you want to go even deeper with Thoth stack, one of the best books I found on astrology toward majors is Philip Seckler, who also used to be actually, Lon Milo DuQuette used to be a student of Philip Seckler, book on the Thoth tarot and astrology and other selected writings. This is, when I had Tower card as my card of the year, what I read in here was just amazing, amazing. Anybody who has this book will vouch for this book. Fantastic resource if you want to take your astrology, especially in regard to the majors, much, much deeper. And she covers elementals too, because I was just reading about the Hanged Man, and she just covers it too in terms of its relationship to element water. Crowley you will never find the book, and I don't think you will also ever find, I'm sorry, I don't think you will also ever find a reference guide that will show you reversed meanings for Crowley deck, because Crowley did not use reversals. There was no such thing for Crowley. What Crowley used was called elemental dignities, meaning looking at the elemental attribution of the cards next to each other and how they play out. I'm going to link below Mary K. Greer's amazing, really short and good to the point blog post on how to read with elemental dignities. And if that's not enough, and you are a person that is very, go even in a deeper dive, you can always get this book called Tarot Decoded by Elizabeth Hazel. It's all about elemental dignities, zodiacal dignities, dignities in a court card, and on and on and on. If you don't know what elemental dignities are, in a very basic term, it's basically looking at their elemental attributes and figuring out in your spread whether they're friendly, neutral, or not friendly to each other. For example, fire and water next to each other are going to be friendly, and therefore they're going to enhance the meaning of those cards. Water and earth are another friendly signs. Neutral are going to be fire and earth, and therefore they're not going to neither enhance those cards when they're next to each other, nor or cancel them out. Air and water is not a neutral. Unfriendly cards are fire and water, and therefore they're going to weaken the significance of the cards next to each other. And air and earth are also another ones. So that's what was used in terms of in place of reversals. I don't read reversals. I know a lot of people using the Thoth deck don't read reversals, but knowing and understanding elemental dignities is going to be something that might be useful for you. So this is what I would recommend in terms of books. Another thing, I had a little note here I made to remember to cover all of the resources I wanted to recommend. Another thing, there's other obviously books on the market. There is Mirror of a Soul, that is also good. This is my favorite those books. There's also Benzoff, Crowley Tarot and Keywords. Benzoff is also known to be solid source on Crowley. Again, this is my favorites, and the reasons for it is because they stay so close and they're so great as reference guides. What I would also recommend is, and I will link it below, Susan Chenks and M.M. Meleen. M.M. Meleen, who is creator of Tabula Mundi, Rosetta Tarot, and I think there's another tarot that she's completed or working on and is really great writer of this book. They had a podcast called Fortune's Full House. I'm going to link it below. It's a great podcast that talks about each card in detail, and it also talks about Rider-Waite-Smith and those attributes and meanings. Podcasts are great if you're the person that learns primarily from listening to material. When I was studying Thoth, if this card was my card for the day or card for the week, I will, every time I would get ready for work, do my makeup, I would play an episode from their podcast on this card, and I would learn as I listened. So it's a great way to enhance your learning of the Thoth Tarot. Another thing, what am I thinking about other than their podcast? Trying to remember. I think that's all about the podcast. So it's going to help you to learn it in a different way. Another things that I recommend as you get deeper into the Thoth practice and into learning Thoth tarot deck, then when you feel much more comfortable with astrology, numerology, elementals, think about those. When I think about Thoth, I think about Thoth standing on 4 pillars like a table: astrology, elementals, numerology, and Kabbalah. Only then I would recommend touching Kabbalah, because again, you can feel really overwhelmed. This is why I'm not recommending any books on the Kabbalah, because I also have to decipher for myself which of the books I consider to be the best. If you're somebody that wants to go ahead and cover all of it, go for it. But you can read and you can derive so much meaning from the stack already just by knowing those 3 pillars: elementals, numerology, and astrology, without learning Kabbalah. So please keep that in mind. So I'm going to link it all below. The Mary Greer article on elementals, Mary Greer articles on Erin book, Marcus Katz article on which books he recommends, Lon Milo DuQuette's tarot class that I highly, highly recommend for you to take, Fortune's Full House, a podcast by Susan Chang and Meleen. And I would recommend for you just to start there. Remember, it may feel like this is overwhelming and may feel like a lot. It may feel like you're learning a lot system. You're not. All of the elementals, the astrology, the numerology, and the Kabbalah that you're going to start picking up along the way, it's all going to be applicable to this or to any other rendition of this deck. So you're really enhancing your understanding, and you're understanding the scope of your tarot practice across the board. This is the beauty about this tarot deck, is that it's really you diversifying your meaning and understanding. And I think that that's really that's a huge plus. I don't know how anybody can say that's not a huge plus. So that's what I would recommend. If you are terrified of those deck and you think Crowley is evil and monster, please, please, please spend some time on YouTube learning about Crowley, learning about Wade, learning about the history, learning about history back then, because a lot of the fears comes from, in my experience, from ignorance, and our misunderstanding. Was Crowley the nicest guy? No. Was he a genius? Yes. Is Thoth an absolute genius deck? Yes. Anybody who's familiar with Thoth will tell you that it's an absolute genius deck. It's pretty much an established fact. So comment below, share with me what are some of your resources when it comes to Thoth deck. How do you approach studying it? I know it can be so overwhelming for so many people, but it doesn't have to be. I started out very basic. The card, what is the number of the card? 4, what do I know about number 4? Okay, what do I know about the element water? And what do I know about, remember all of you, astrological attributes going to be on a card. What do I know about Moon and Cancer? And that's how I started. Oh, another book, before I forget, which I don't have here, but if you want to go even deeper, Susan Chang's 36 Degree of Wisdom, or key, what is it, learn? You know which one I'm talking about. Google Susan Chang, or I'm going to link it below, and it's her book on dignities, because it's really amazing what you can learn once you put each corresponding trump next to the card to go even deeper into the symbolism and the meaning. So comment below, share if you know any other amazing books or amazing resources I haven't shared. Let's expand the topic. Other than that, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Bye.